Hello, everyone. My name is Wilson Cruz, and I am an actor, an activist, a producer, a proud New Yorker, but a proud New York-born Puerto Rican, and I am a voter, as I hope you are. But 2022 is an election year. I think you know that. I'm sure you've seen all the ads on your TVs. And so much is at stake this year. So we've got a lot to talk about today. But before we get into this discussion, I want to let you know one very important thing, which is about GLAAD.org/vote and votolatino.org. Both great resources to check your voter registration status, to register, and to make a plan to vote with pride on election day, which is coming up very quickly. But today I have the distinct honor of talking today with Maria Teresa Kumar, President and CEO of Voto Latino, who is one of my personal heroes, and I'm very proud to have this conversation with her today. Maria Teresa is going to help us think through a lot of the issues that will be on the ballot in November, and I have a few questions for her. So, Maria, thank you so much for taking this time. Let's start first with you telling me a bit about Voto Latino, why you got involved with them. What was your political awakening, if you will?
Well, first of all, I would be remiss if I wasn't thanking GLAAD for bringing us together, Wilson. I have been such a huge fan of you for a long time, and GLAAD is a partner organization that we've been working with now for several years, because we deeply believe that when we talk about the Latino voter, we are intersectional. We are all the things. And sometimes people want to put us and silo us. And for us, it's very important to recognize that we are that we are straight, that we are gay, that we are trans, that we are binary. And it's important to have the conversations of inclusivity. And so I'm thrilled to be here. And with that, you asked me, why Voto Latino? And to be honest, I grew up in California under Pete Wilson. Most people don't remember who he is, but he is the governor who put on the ballot the original Show Me Your Papers law. It was the first anti-immigrant in modern day history legislation that our neighbors voted for. And for me, in a community of Sonoma, which was super progressive, I saw neighbors turn against my family, and it was painful. I remember one time going to a restaurant with my grandmother, and my grandmother is a grandmother, and it was someone that we knew, and they basically refused her service, and it hurt. And it was because these papers, these Show Me Your Paper laws, gave agency for anyone to be bigoted. And it made me deeply angry, because I deeply believe in America's promise of self-fulfillment and self-definition. And so I remember that Thanksgiving going home and convincing my grandmother, my aunts, and my uncle to become US citizens. And Wilson, just like I was convincing them, millions of young Latinos in California and Asian Americans were doing the same thing, having straight conversations. And sometimes, Wilson, people try to say, well, what happened to the Latino vote? I say, we gave you California. You're welcome.
Hello.
Without California, we would not have LGBTQ issues. We would not have information when it comes to providing real, safe, clean water and energy policy. We would not have abortion on the table. Like all these issues that we take for granted. It was because Latinos decided to make themselves heard and become part of the table. And so with Voto Latino, what the biggest kept secret is that Latinos, technically, we became the second largest demographic in America in 2003. We founded Voto Latino in 2004 because we said, if there were Pete Wilsons in liberal California, you better believe they're going to be in other places. And so, shocking and sad at the same time, we took opportunity to build mobilization, get this, in Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Nevada, Virginia, Colorado, Texas, Arizona, the places that everybody's like, what's going to happen? It's determined by the Latino vote, because at the same time, when we give young people in particular agency and power, they step up, not just to protect themselves, but as importantly, to protect their families.
And so I was one of those young Latino LGBT agitators. And I wore that proudly, and I wear it proudly today. Maybe not so young, but
always young, sweetheart. It comes from the heart. Viene del corazón.
But, I knew that there were lives on the line, right? Literally lives on the line. We were seeing an entire generation of young men decimated right before our eyes. And my uncle, who was not gay but died of AIDS, died in 1988, and I couldn't vote, but I started then to convince my own family, my parents and my grandparents at the time, my aunts and uncles and cousins who could vote, to vote for me, vote for my interests.
Right.
Are we reaching everyone we need to in order to exercise that power right now? Do you see these candidates doing the work of reaching out to Latino voters in their states and communities?
So first of all, Wilson, the journey that you talked about, that you were trying to galvanize and inform your family long before you were able to vote, is you are Voto Latino. That is what we recognize, that young Latinos have so much power and agency within their families, because oftentimes they're the ones translating cultural norms, that we need to make sure that they're emboldened and recognize that power. I call it innate leadership. 7 out of 10 young Latinos voted for Biden in the 2020 election versus 6 out of 10 older Latinos. And the reason being is that I do not have to convince a young person that LGBTQ issues are important. I don't have to convince them of a woman's right to choose. I don't have to convince them that we're in a climate crisis. I just need to convince them to connect the dots and vote for leadership that will change their lives. The reason that Biden signed legislation to forgive felonies for marijuana possession was because you voted. Yes. No one else cared, but he cares about you, right? The reason
the student loans.
The student loans, like, I don't know, I was a Pell Grant recipient because we met the threshold. $20,000 of loan forgiveness for Latino community basically clears the debt for most of us. And it allows us now to think about, do we want to have a family? Do we want to start a small business? Do we want to put down payment for our first home?
What are you, like, when these candidates show up at our doorstep, hopefully, what topics do you think should be at the top of their mind when they're talking to us?
There has been this institutionalized propagation of Latino tropes, right? And so, for example, they believe that we're anti-abortion. They believe that we don't really care about climate. They believe that we are homophobic. None of that is true. Poll after poll after poll shows us that. And so when you go knocking on the door, you better believe that Latinos want to know about your position on abortion. Why? 68% of Latinos believe that it's a private issue and it's not the government's business. And that's for the total. That's including men in ruby red states. If you just talk to young people, it goes closer to 80, 90%. If you just talk to Latina women, it's 75%. Why? Because Latinas are oftentimes the breadwinners. They're the ones that have to make these really tough decisions. Do I expand my family? Do I drop out of school? Or do I need to go pursue my career?
The LGBT community, the Latinx community face disparities in access to healthcare. So why should healthcare be an issue we all care about, right? Whether or not you have insurance or not, right? And especially given Obamacare and the access that we have access to it. Why should we continue to be talking about healthcare and fighting for healthcare? Because we're not done.
Well, one of the reasons we're not done is that there's still so many that don't have access to it, right? And I'm thinking even our undocumented brothers and sisters who pay into the system. What we saw in the last piece of legislation with the Anti-Inflation Act that Biden signed, he caps insulin at $35. That's a big deal for the Latino community in particular, because we know how many of us suffer from type 2 diabetes, but because young people came out and voted, they demanded it along with older people and said, this is something that we care about. That's why now that's on the table.
It's a scary time to be an American right now, if you ask me, where we see in state after state where there are limitations to access to the polls. Where is it exactly that we're seeing these voting laws that disproportionately disenfranchise Latinx voters? And what I want to know, given the circumstances that we are facing right now, that are real, that are on the books right now, how do we get our people to the polls despite that?
So Wilson, there is not a voter, particularly in the Latino community, who should be more angry at the legislation and the courts trying to prevent our vote. The most underreported piece of Shelby County versus Eric Holder, this was the Supreme Court decision that gutted the Voting Rights Act. The Voting Rights Act was put in place for underrepresented communities so that they could vote safely. But that Shelby County, 3 years before, had experienced a 297% increase in the Latino community. And then you follow every single jurisdiction that pulled their voting rights access. 22 jurisdictions in 3 months, they had a minimum of a 90% increase in Latino population. This has everything to do about communities of color with the rise of Latinos in the backdrop. And we should be offended because they want our taxes. They want us to work. They want us to work for other people.
They want us to do the work they don't want to do.
Right. But they want all of the things.
All of the benefit.
Yeah, all of the things, all of the benefits without giving us a fundamental right that every citizen should demand in this country. Texas, we saw a close to 27% increase in young Latino voters voting in Texas in 2020. That's huge. And what they did, instead of applaud a fair, free, certified election that went all the way up to Congress, they said, wait a second, young Latinos are voting. So one of the pieces of legislation that we're right now suing, they basically made it illegal for a young person to register to vote on their college campus. Since 2020 to November of this year, we're expecting 300,000 young Latinos to turn 18 years old. You should be angry. You should be angry and you should exercise your power because they see your power. We have a whole group of people who are denying that we had fair, free elections, and they're trying to undermine that. And in some cases, those are the same people that are targeting the Latino community with misogynistic and racist underpinnings that puts every single Latino in vulnerable positions. And we can't have that. I have no problem debating issues, and I may not see eye to eye to someone, but for someone to storm a Capitol because they were petulant children, because they didn't like the results of an election, putting millions of people's vote, trying to throw millions of Americans who stood in line, cast a ballot during a pandemic, exposing them to health reasons, we should all be angry at that. And now that we have receipts that there was a concerted effort by one party to undermine that, if we don't have people who are friendly to our electoral systems, who recognize the importance of the integrity of that system, then we're not going to have a democracy as we know it.
You know, there are people on the ballot who are actively denying the legitimacy of the 2020 election, an election which everyone who's looked at it has said is the safest and most secure election in the history of our country. Right. Now that's saying something. And yet there are people who are literally running on the idea that they need to change the electoral process in order to do what?
Right. Well, they're trying to remain in power. Exactly. And the power that is represented is not that of a multicultural America. And I think we have to just speak very straight that it's not multicultural, and it's not welcoming of LGBTQ communities. It is not welcoming of Jewish communities. It's not welcoming of Latino, BIPOC communities. It is not.
How do you feel this censorship is affecting the Latinx communities? These anti-CRT people and these heartbreaking life-threatening don't say gay or trans bills that we're seeing popping up.
We as a country have always valued deliberate conversation and free thinking. And we have been that beacon for so many other countries to do the same. And the idea that we cannot face our history, as complicated and as painful as it may be, allows us then to truncate our growth. It provides us a space to repeat it itself. And what we need to do is recognize our deficiencies, recognize where we've gone wrong so that we don't repeat it, but just as importantly, so that we can actually have conversations. And the CTR has been really painful, but listening to the conversations around anti-trans and especially around aiming them at children, that's an act of cowardice. That is bulliness. That is not
an act of violence. It's an act of violence.
It is psychological warfare. And it is something that people don't understand, that a lot of these children are oftentimes coming out and they're brave for speaking their truth so young in spaces that are not welcome. And we should applaud their leadership and their sense of self and recognize that by them being able to come out, we all become stronger because we can all learn from their ability to speak their truth.
So please be sure to check your voter registration. You can go to GLAAD.org/vote and votolatino.org. And a reminder to everyone that you can check your voter registration there, and we will see you at the polls. Vote with pride, vote con orgullo, te quiero, and I'll see you guys very soon.